There have been few challenges and there have been soon few negligence. Challenges because of the narrative, because our ability to build good narrative about Pakistan is very scarce. We do not have many English speaking channels, or except for maybe one, and our ability to thought some of the Western narrative which comes towards BRI and some or the other, because of BRI it's targeted towards CPEC. The narrative around debt trap, which is mostly false when it comes to CPEC. I mean, I'm not saying that Pakistan is not a debt driven or debt led country, but on CPEC part, the numbers that were showcased are largely false or highly exaggerated. In the larger scheme of Belt and Road Initiative, which was of course talk of the town, everyone was speaking about it from starting from 2013 when President Xi went to Central Asia, Asian countries, announced his concept of rejuvenating the old Silk Road through the not just the Belt and Road Initiative but also the Maritime Silk Road, and you know how this 4 trillion economy of China at that time, 4.2 precisely, would help countries, you know, through import and export. Like for countries of Pakistan, we had thought of around 3% GDP growth, more than its original number, and perhaps if say about 1 to 2% of that 4.2 trillion would move through Pakistan, the economic impact of it, and you would know it more, the overall impact on the GDP and the growth of the economic growth and the industrial cooperation with China.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Economic Angle with Dr. Usman Chohan. It is my pleasure today to discuss a very important subject for Pakistan, which is CPEC, with a person who I believe is the most knowledgeable on the subject, which is Dr. Hassan Daud Butt. He has worked extensively on CPEC and continues to keep a close eye on it. इनकी बहुत गहरी नज़र है और तजर्बा भी इनका बहुत वसी है. तो मैं शामिल गुफ्तगू करते हुए बाइस फ़ख्र समझता हूँ. वेलकम डॉक्टर साहब to the show.
Thank you very much, Usman. How are you doing, sir?
Fine, thank you, Dr. Saab. It's really a pleasure to have you here. To start us off, sir, can you lay out a little bit of the initial vision? आप थोड़ा सा 2010, 2011, 12, 13 उस वक्त को ज़रा जहन नशीं करते हुए थोड़ा सा हमें बताएं कि what was the thinking in Pakistan and China that led to CPEC, sir?
Yes, thank you very much, Usman. It's a pleasant surprise to see your Urdu being so fluent or almost as fluent as your English. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for having me in your show. Yes, you know, in 2013, and I mean, there are two important years which are associated with the CPEC. One is 2013 when it all started during the visit of our premier to China, and then following to that in 2015 when President Xi Jinping visited Pakistan and addressed the nation through the parliament. These two are important milestones in CPEC's history, or perhaps in the history of Pakistan China relationship, transforming it from a strategic standpoint to an economic perspective. So from there, the initial in the MOUs and the long-term plans of CPEC, the directions that were set were, there were three targets. One was still about 2025, the other was till 2028, and then perhaps till 2030 or following years to 2030. And in the initial few years, it was to address the bottlenecks, the headwinds, the challenges that we already had on Pakistan side, and the government manifesto of that time was around electricity provision. So therefore, the initial one of the major area of cooperation were the energy projects there, and of course the infrastructure. So largely around energy, also it was energy infrastructure, mostly around energy creation, uh, and then on the infrastructure, roads and highways, especially motorway between Multan and Sakkar, and then so now from Karachi to all the way on the eastern side, and then the 2015, the all parties conference, in which importance was given to the western corridor also, you know, where DI Khan was made the central point, going all the way from Zob, from Burhan. If those of your audience who know Burhan, it is in KP. So from KP going all the way DA Khan and moving southward towards Gwadar. And this is in terms of the larger infrastructure, regional connectivity perspective moving because from Central Asian republics, our distance were shortened because of this and would be short railways. And you must be hearing things which are happening right now. So that was one aspect of it. And then, of course, the optical fiber. So overall connectivity, whether it's energy connectivity, whether it's infrastructure or optical fiber, all of this. The second phase was, till, as I said, around 2025, 26, which was for the once the headwinds were addressed, moving towards more industrial cooperation phase, which actually started in 2016, where an MOU, a larger strategic cooperation on industrial cooperation, was signed, where 9 special economic zones were to set up, and Chinese either through direct investment or through joint ventures would come and support Pakistan industrial cooperation or development. And of course, the vision would stem from China working on its western border through Xinjiang, developing that and then translating their 30 years of experience of special economic zones, the infrastructure connectivity, connecting all sorts of incentives, which whether comes through the industrial zone, whether export promotion zones, whether free zones or special economic zones or maritime zones, connecting them to Xinjiang and then later towards the western side of Pakistan, moving towards Gwadar and linking it to Gwadar. And then the third part was, of course, once the industrial cooperation would take shape, the third part would be of railway, which, of course, China has the largest experience speed railway. Our railway speed is around 45 to 55 kilometers per hour as we speak, depending on whether it's freight or whether it's for passenger movement. And then through ML1 taking it to about 100 kilometers per hour, close to that or more, depending on what sort of cargo or passenger whether it's taking. And then, of course, moving it upwards towards a better cooperation. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for that uh, deliberate and comprehensive view. You have spoken of connectivity, you've spoken of energy, you've spoken of a roadmap, various phases. This stuff that seemed to be a truly comprehensive partnership. And there were many successes of this across phase one and then in phase two. Let's talk, sir, a little bit about the good things that have come from CPEC. And I'm sure there are many, but certainly the ones that stand out to you as the most important in terms of successes in the last 12 years.
Yes, of course. There are a few tangible ones and there are a few intangible. So let me start with intangibles. First of all, in the larger scheme of Belt and Road Initiative, which was, of course, talk of the town. Everyone was speaking about it from starting from 2013 when President Xi went to Central Asia, Asian countries, announced his concept of rejuvenating the old Silk Road through the not just the Belt and Road Initiative, but also the Maritime Silk Road, and how this 4 trillion economy of China at that time, 4.2 precisely, would help countries, through import and export. Like for countries of Pakistan, we had thought of around 3% GDP growth, more than its original number, and perhaps if say about 1 to 2% of that 4.2 trillion would move through Pakistan, the economic impact of it, and you would know it more, the overall impact on the GDP and the growth of the economic growth and the industrial cooperation with China. So, first of all, in terms of BRI, I think CPEC became the poster boy for BRI. It was largely acknowledged the work that was being done, the effort that was being put by not just the government but all pillars of the government and whole of government approach, supporting the CPEC by and large by the public also. And there were challenges, but overall, public speaking about it, a new narrative of Pakistan being a good investment destination was being built, and from energy sector, because at that time a lot of political crisis was created around scarcity of energy, so energy was coming. So in the past about one decade or a little more, 1 year more, we have had about 6,000 megawatt of energy. We have around 585 kilometers of highways, roads. We have had about 850 kilometer of transmission line. We have had optical fiber connecting from China border all the way to our export to China has risen by about 40%. Our sesame seed, agri-based products export to China has risen by about 35. Our seafood products have increased by 38%. And of course, the infrastructure connectivity, the rural urban synergy, like for instance, the Hakla Yarek Road, which connects the outskirts of Islamabad to DI Khan, and then from Burhan going, as I said, from the western corridor, eastern corridor, and now we're talking about the Sakkar Hyderabad motorway through public-private partnership. So there's from intangible of Pakistan being in the headlines of Belt and Road Initiative in China, in all partner countries, also other countries looking at Pakistan as a favorable destination. I mean, you remember 2013, we have had challenges of not just the narrative of a country largely hit by terrorism and separatism, and then of course the good narrative around incentives. So I think it has done a lot of good for Pakistan. We have on the maritime sector, not just the Gwadar port but also the East Bay Expressway, and now government talking about the blue economy. This term of blue economy or coastal development stem out of the CPEC long-term plan, which spoke about 1+5. And now the government just recently has announced fisheries policy, the coastal development policy. So I think a lot of things have happened, both tangible and intangible. Sometimes we fail to acknowledge the overall impact. Also in terms of railway, you're seeing now how Afghanistan is being included in the overall scheme of things. China talking about economic development, but there have been some failures, and we'll talk about them in future also. In
Absolutely.
part of the program, yeah.
Exactly right. But it is worth it to appreciate so much that has been done on the good side, because there has been a significant narrative warfare against China by foreign powers. And since this was the poster boy, this was the target number one in that regard. But I fully understand and agree with you that this was a very different country, and that the infrastructure that we have, you don't go around looking at infrastructure and appreciating it every day, but it makes a big difference. And all of the things that you have listed in cross many economic sectors, plus the energy, plus infrastructure, one needs to take the time to appreciate that these things did not exist back then, and it's not that far back in history. So you're absolutely right. And at the same time, then has it reached its fullest success? Some people may say no. What would you identify as the reasons that there are critiques on the technical side or on the economic side? And Pakistan has a big responsibility in that regard, as I understand. What do you think about the other side of the coin, sir?
Yeah, there have been few challenges, and there have been soon few negligence also. Challenges because of the narrative, because our ability to build good narrative about Pakistan is very scarce. We do not have many English speaking channels, or except for maybe one, and our ability to thought some of the Western narrative which comes towards BRI, and some or the other, because of BRI it's targeted towards CPEC. The narrative around debt trap, which is mostly false when it comes to CPEC. I mean, I'm not saying that Pakistan is not a debt driven or debt led country, but on CPEC part, the numbers that were showcased are largely false or highly exaggerated. So I think that part is that parts on the narrative side. I think we were not able to build our ability. The government's instrument to address narrative is partly good for domestic audience, but for international audience, I think that's one area where we should build, and people like you should participate more, and have more open discussion with anyone who wants to speak. Say for example, you want to talk about CPEC, there can be fair discussion where people like us can go and participate and just showcase the numbers. I mean, when you know the numbers in this time and age, you do not have to portray any false narrative. So that was
Hmm.
one. The other was, of course, the industrial cooperation, and that was of various reasons. One was, of course, COVID 19. It hit us badly, the movement, the supply chain, and overall global economic, which you would know more, the economic indicators made people a bit skeptical about investing overseas, and therefore more. And then later, through geopolitical reasons, protectionism rising in the overall speech, global speech that was happening around the economic numbers, and the challenges of misinformation, disinformation, climate change, floods in Pakistan, and then continuously each year we have this. So therefore, we were not able to build industrial zones as we would like. The government focus perhaps could not be as much as it should be because of again the same reasons, and then the political economy perspective that we have, and we keep drum beating about political economy mostly. So that was another perhaps factor, because once achievement is others failure in this time and age. So that
Hmm.
is somehow the national narrative is very bad. I feel that. Therefore, I keep promoting that there are few agendas and there are few initiatives which are of national nature and therefore should be addressed nationally with all parties' participation. And
Hmm.
then,
Hmm.
of course, the overall global economy, which is still, and you would know better that the global economy is still vulnerable. Still, we see this year, and then Gaza came. Then, of course, now Iran, which is just
Hmm.
next to our border. What is happening in the trade war, and this protectionist approach, this trade warfare, this overall discussion in the American campaign towards election was all anti-China, as you know. So
Hmm.
therefore, in true essence, we were not able to get our industrial cooperation work. And then, of course, because of that economy, which was not performing well overall nationally and globally, we could not have important project like ML1, because I think ML1 is perhaps one game changer project. We like speaking about the word game changer, so I'll use it as much as I can. Yeah. So yeah, that perhaps is one project which should happen yesterday, not even tomorrow.
Hmm.
So therefore that aspect of it, and now I think there is discussion, and there's a natural gravitational pull which is taking us for building that, because of course the cost of that project was high. Initially, it was around 8 billion. Then later, numbers change, and uh, some major routes were included and some excluded. So
Hmm.
yes, so this was one area, and then later, I don't know whether we can have a discussion or perhaps have another program someday about the IPPs and the
Hmm.
narrative that was built around IPPs.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I always say, Usman, that one of the contributory factor for this capacity payment, that this is for me, and I'm not an energy sector expert. I work on investment only. One of the
Hmm.
contributory factor is we could not industrialize as much as we should, and that therefore our utilization of energy remained low. We could not have or had the special economic zones, the industrial zones, the Gwadar free zones. Gwadar electricity is still not being utilized. I mean, still the energy project is in waiting.
Hmm.
So there are multiple reasons, and in economy, as you know, there's always there's a jigsaw puzzle which links one to another, and that if one element is missing, the other performance goes low automatically or naturally.
Hmm. That is a very thorough explanation of some of the challenges that have arisen, but there's certainly hope in my esteem, and I believe that there is certainly much that is yet to be accomplished within the same framework of CPEC, and that's why I would like you to, sir, to provide some uh, of what you envision as the way forward over perhaps the next 5 years within the same framework of CPEC. What do you think will happen? What benefits shall both countries receive? What would BRI look like? And I, of course, keep in mind that it is a time of turbulence. जिन आपने मसाइल की आगाही की, they still exist, and it's not going to get any easier, perhaps. But even in this blurry fog of war type environment, what do you see for this CPEC, China, and Pakistan, sir?
Yes, Usman, there are few existential problems that we have, and if we do not address them, whether we have CPAC or no CPAC, we need to address them, like creating an enabling environment for investment attraction. Because you can't survive on remittance and you can't survive on putting taxes on middle class and those who are paying. So I mean, the structure has to be more export led, or you know, the government investment, not just the foreign investment, but the government investment on the productive sectors also, productive sectors of the economy. So
Hmm.
these are existential issues. If you do not like climate change, also the investment in climate change, the investment in green energy, so when these are existential issues, you look at opportunities across border, because I believe that these issues like the climate change, like floods in Pakistan recently, they have impact, not just within the country, but sometimes it also have a spillover effect to other countries which are neighboring. Poverty, terrorism, moving outside the borders. So therefore, you should look at opportunities outside, and some one of the opportunities, of course, is the Global Development Initiative of China. China is now, especially after US exiting the Paris Accord, China is now championing the overall green initiative globally.
Hmm.
So I think in that context, we should look at China for investment in green technologies, green energy, solar. Thanks to China, the cost of solar,
Yes.
hybrid, wind, solar, hybrid projects have gone down significantly. So we should look at not just in acquiring infrastructure, but acquiring talent and research with them. So looking at how in next 5 years, as you said, or maybe 5 to 10 years, very short time in nation's history, we can actually transform, because the region is transforming. You're seeing all across Asia, economies are getting better. It's just few economies which are under challenge.
Hmm.
One of them is ours, and then of course some of our neighboring. Otherwise, if you look at Southeast Asia, look at ASEAN, all
Hmm.
these countries are doing very well, and they are balancing China and US exports versus import,
Hmm.
export versus and also we need to realize in a larger geopolitical context is that US is our US and EU, if we take them as a block, not in terms of international relations but or geopolitics, but in terms of our exports to certain areas. So in that context, EU and US remains our largest recipient of our textile and other products, and on the other hand, China is the largest investment, by far the largest investor in Pakistan. So we have to keep that balance, learn from China, learn how China created that balance with ASEAN, learn from ASEAN actually,
Hmm.
how they're creating that balance. So the other thing that we should work immediately is on the investment attraction, finding companies, enterprises in Pakistan which can do joint ventures with Chinese enterprises, building their capacity, building their understanding of Chinese culture, business culture, because China is the factory of the world. It's doing business with over 150 countries. So
mm,
it's we have to learn, not China. We just can't say. We need to create incentives for investors, not just China but otherwise also, to
mm,
come and invest in Pakistan. Look at our security challenges. I think if you can build 4 5 a special economic zone, providing them security is also part of enabling environment.
mm,
And then, of course, our road shows and the board of investments work overseas to attract investment. You have to not have a one size fit all sort of approach, but tailor made approach for each respective countries. Where, like Indonesia, there are things that you can leverage other than just the economic numbers. Then Malaysia, then China. These are countries which have good relations with Bangladesh, which have great relationship with Pakistan as of now, and
mm,
we should build on that. I think we've so therefore not just China Pakistan, although CPEC is bilateral, we can look at third party participation, attracting Middle Eastern countries in petrochemical mining sectors to work with Chinese technology. You can't have standalone. I mean, you can have, but instead of having standalone projects with each country, you can have a joint venture, tripartite joint venture with other countries. And then ML1 has to happen immediately. I think you can't have it in as a complete project. Then you can have it in parts, looking, identifying where there are challenges in, say, for example, Sakkar Rodi section. There are always accidents. We keep
mm,
hearing about them. So build those, and section by section, you can build all the way to Tajikistan and perhaps to Central Asian countries.
mm, mm,
And then, of course, uh, building the true narrative, not in the I mean, also in part of China has to look at Pakistan not through, and it's easier said than done, but not through security lens, but an opportunity perspective also. How can Pakistan provide opportunity? This is difficult when when you see incidents happening in energy projects and in other areas, in urban areas also. But then you have to look at the overall larger picture of geopolitics, and then find true friends. China is our true friend. As you know, more in this time and age, more near shoring, friendly shoring happening. And I say China is also near and also our friend. So in that
mm,
context, both ways, China should come and invest in Pakistan. But then, of course, we have to create that enabling environment. And that enabling environment, of course, Prime Minister Office, the SIFC would have their important role, but entire bureaucracy of province, each sector should have the courage, the wisdom to take initiatives. I know, especially in public-private partnership, novelty is a challenge in public sector, but you have to step out of these challenges and attract investment. I also feel because of the food security vulnerabilities growing because of climate change. Agriculture is another sector which we need to work with them very, very closely.
mm,
I'm glad that there were about 300 Pakistani young uh, energy. I won't call them expert, but not energy, agriculture sector people were sent, stakeholders were sent to China recently. They've just returned from there, and I think there were new areas that they would work on, because this
mm,
year's our agriculture yield has not been very promising. Our industrial large scale manufacturing has not been. So we know, for me, we know two challenges: agriculture, large scale manufacturing, and
mm,
who can we go to? China. How
mm,
can we go to? Through CPEC platform. So the method is there, the challenge, the requirement, the demand is there. So even if you look at demand versus supply, demand is there, supply is there. It's just to connect them, I believe.
mm. Excellent, sir. I think that is a very comprehensive analysis. आपने बहुत मुफस्सल गुफ्तगू की, and I think that this is very beneficial for our viewers and listeners because CPEC has been a a tornado of narratives, but there have been people like yourself who have been working on it since the beginning. Many Chinese have put their total energy into it. Many Pakistanis have put their total energy into it. And yet, in this war of narratives, their hard work goes underappreciated. So, I want to express my appreciation for you and for people like you on both sides of the border who work to make such things materialize. And this is how destinies are built, keeping in mind the challenges that you have raised. So I would like to thank you for your time, sir. It was a very nice conversation, sir.
Thank you, Usman. It's always a pleasure.